People who got fired for the stupidest reason. What happened? I worked in a customer service call center for an insurance company. A customer called in and had a medical emergency, probably a heart attack, but I'm not sure. While I was on the phone with her, I used the phone in the empty cubicle next to me to call 911 and stayed on both lines to be sure that EMS got to her. I was fired because A, I took too long on calls already and this was exceptionally long. B, I made an unauthorized outgoing call. And C, I gave the customer's personal information, name and address, out to the 911 operator. I was driving cars for a shady dealer under the table while I was laid off from my real job. Got a call that my uncle had attempted suicide and was in a psychiatric ward in a local hospital and wouldn't talk to anybody else but me. Told boss I had to roll. He said something like, "Your job comes before family. If you leave, don't come back." I left. The next morning he called and asked me why I wasn't at work. I hung up on him. My brother had emergency gallbladder removal. I called in to tell my employer I'd need to take a couple days off to help him since our parents were out of town for something. They started cussing me out and asked what was more important, my job or family. Then the same guy tried calling the next day like nothing happened, asking why I didn't show up for my shift. Dumbus. During my senior year in high school, I was working at McDonald's. It was right after Christmas and we were really busy. I'd been there 4 hours, had 2 to go, was supposed to get a 30-minute break. Since we'd slowed down, I asked if I could have a break. The shift manager said no one was getting breaks. I said thanks a lot. She told the assistant manager, pretty sure they were sleeping together, that I told her to F off. He fired me on the spot. Wouldn't even let me give my side of the story. A week later I was working at Jack in the Box. Was a shift manager in 6 months. Did that through a couple years of college. Dropped out. Never wanted to go anyway. And moved up to assistant manager and then a couple years later, general manager. I remembered how shitty I was treated at McDonald's and made sure I treated my employees well. Had the 3rd lowest turnover rate in a 95 restaurant region. Had the 2nd highest average hourly pay and number 2 in profit improvement. Take care of your people and they'll do the same for you. Thought of another one. This would have been one of my first jobs that I didn't even get a chance to start. I applied to be a deckhand on a local ferry. Went though and paid training as part of the interview process. First aid, CPR, crisis management, safety policy, whatnots, all group interviews. Anyway, I got the job after about a week. I also got my offer in writing with the expected start date. That was going to be a Tuesday 2 weeks later. And I remember this detail because it went to I accept and sign and take my copy. I was thrilled. I was going to be on the water and making money for the summer. My friends were hanging out down by the water when I left the interview, so I went and told them all about it and the start date, etc. Again, cementing that start date in my mind so I was ready. The following week, a week before I was supposed to start, I got a call from the office asking where I was. "We expected you to be here an hour ago," and so on. I asked them to check the offer that I had signed because I was never told that my start date had changed. I mean, I was available and explained that I'd be happy to come down right away, but I hadn't known of any changes. They checked, agreed that they had made the mistake, and then told me that, nevertheless, a miscommunication this early on was a bad sign and they would not be hiring me. So I was let go because someone put down the wrong date. I was fired for playing Solitaire on my 15-minute break when I was working as a receptionist. The doctor who owned the clinic was dumb enough to put that as the reason in my termination letter. I collected unemployment after he tried to appeal it. They explained in great detail how stupid of a reason this was for termination. Accepted job and notified them I would need next date off for my sister's wedding. 2 months after the start date, came back from my sister's wedding and hit the fan while I was gone. Not my responsibility, but my name was on some of the changes in the document. Canned that day for not being there when they needed me. I got fired from my first ever job as a SIT counselor in training. At the summer day camp I went to every year as a kid, I was given the 6-7-year-olds. One of them asked me if I had a girlfriend. Girls are gross. Why would you do that sort of way? And I said yes. He asked me if I ever kiss her and I said yes, in a fun, horror movie voice manner. He was like, "You were gross." We all had a laugh. I thought it was a fun exchange. Well, I guess the kid went home and told his mom that night and she freaked out. Demanded I be fired for teaching her child about sex and giving details of my sex life to her child. I was 13. All I said was that I kissed a girl. The camp fired me right there. I had no idea what I said was out of line. The schedule was hanging off the wall and it was magnetized. Everyone's names were little magnets. Someone knocked it off the wall and thought they put the magnets back in the right places. Naturally, I didn't show up for my shift. I was fired the next day even after it came to light what happened because I should know what my shifts were. Meh. I got fired from Sonic when I told them I was no longer going to be available for last minute call-ins because I'd gotten a second job. My boss was not happy because I live the closest. So he stormed off and started screaming. Guess this is professional March 54's last day. I hope you're happy. I tried to clarify that I'd still be available for set shifts. I just wouldn't be on call anymore. He screamed at me to shut up. I hadn't clocked in yet, and I could sense a tantrum, so I asked if I should even bother clocking in. He threw a burger at me and told me to get the F out. So I did. They had a drive-through line wrapped around the building, and I was the only non-family employee on until 3. Supposedly, I argued with the owner's wife about working weekends. I specifically told them I can work weekends, but cannot work in a time with less than a day's notice. I'm not at your beck and call for $8 an hour. F me right? I was fired up, politely let go because my manager decided I was lying about having surgery without ever actually talking to me. I let her know 2 weeks in advance and reminded her 5 different times 3 different ways. But the schedule never changed to reflect the time off I needed. I took my 3 days off, and she had another manager call me to ask me where I was on the second day. The manager who called me was horrified to learn that, yes, I had surgery, yes, I was hopped up on pain medication, and, yes, main manager knew about this. Main manager was also mad that I had poor performance the week following, which is something I had noted when I told her about the surgery. I needed a week of low impact work as I recovered. 1 week, I noticed I wasn't on the schedule at all and was talking to the manager who'd called me about it. I jokingly wondered if it was because of my surgery. She basically told me she couldn't legally say yes, but I wasn't wrong. Main manager notified me a couple days later. Part of me is mad, but part of me is relieved I'm not in such a toxic place anymore. I got a middle-level position at the company where they boasted at how family-orientated they are. They are the kind of company that has a small arcade and putt-putt and ping-pong table and encouraged people to relax and play them. After a month of being there, I decided to play some co-workers in ping-pong since I'm pretty decent at it. The owner and his son ends up walking through the doors and sees me playing and challenges me. I play the son and absolutely demolish him. He got extremely upset and walked away after throwing the paddle at me. Later that week I was fired for not fitting the culture. Cool. I was a new hire. It was Christmas time, so the office was hosting a Christmas sweater competition. I was appointed judge because I was new and thus impartial. I received explicit consent from each employee in front of the supervisor before proceeding to judge. At least one female co-worker accused me of looking at her chest while I was judging her sweatshirt. I kid you not. Fired. I got fired from a McDick's for asking too many customers how their day was going, not because it slowed anything down. Mind you, I only did when it was slow. They put in complaints to corporate that I was being invasive. The first time I thought my manager was making a joke. Guy preparing to retire, who had been training me to take over his job for the past 7 months, felt I was ready to take over completely. Boss was afraid to lose 30+ years of experience and fired me to keep the old guy for a little longer. From what I understand, there was a pretty big fight. Old guy was a wonderful reference for me with the new job I obtained, with a 20k plus pay raise, and begrudgingly agreed to stay on for another year. I once worked for a small private school. A new supervisor was hired, and she called an after hours meeting the Wednesday night right before Thanksgiving. One teacher didn't attend and she was fired. When the new supervisor was finally let go, I heard from the owner that they had 4 lawsuits from employees being wrongfully fired. My boss asked me to come in his office and fired me on the spot with the excellent reason of you know why. I was pretty distressed and way too shy to protest and left with that. Learned afterwards that it was because I had a cold that day and was a bit tired. Joke on him. It's illegal to fire people on the spot in my country and I brought some well-deserved justice on him. I got fired from Burger King because a coworker let me use his vape on my break. When I was off break, I tried giving it back but kept getting ignored. I figured I'd give it back after we closed but he left early. I went back the next day, my day off, to return it and got fired for stealing. Got fired from a public library for taking 2 carts to collect books from the outside drop box instead of 1. The past few times I emptied the drop box on a Monday it required 2 trips, so I brought 2 carts instead. It turns out the matter of how many carts were used in emptying the drop box was a matter of a library board vote and I was in violation of a town ordinance. Mind you, I wasn't fired. I was placed on paid administrative leave pending a library board inquiry at which I was welcome to call witnesses. I couldn't keep a straight face, so I resigned. Paid admin leave? Did you wait till the last possible minute to resign? I certainly would have. I would also have submitted a massive list of witnesses to call and then tried to have the hearing date moved further back to accommodate them all. Sufficient notice for the witnesses and all that, definitely not an attempt to stretch out that paid admin leave. I was given my work schedule for the week. It was changed after I received it, and I didn't show up on a day I had originally been off. Manager called and said, "You've done this too many times. You're fired." I'd never so much as been late for work. I learned later that they found a way to get rid of every single person under 18. Yeah, they got me on that one too. Never late, never missed a day, but I got scheduled to work on a day that I had to work my other job. I specifically requested that day off. Okay, no problem. Arranged for another employee to take that shift, and informed my supervisor of the change. Okay, says he. I asked if I needed to fill out a schedule change slip. Nope. He'd take care of all of it. I even double checked the day after. He said it was all good. The other employee filled my shift as expected. No problems. I guess they came to a point some months later when they decided to let most of the new hires go, and I was one of them. In my departure document, they listed my terrible black mark that explained why they were tossing me out. I'd missed a shift. Yep. I refused to sign it.